Today, while listening to this song, which is the song that I have listened to since I was a young man, and I love that song, The Sounds of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel. But today, for whatever reason, these lines from the song suddenly and literally exploded in my mind. And I quote these words. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made. And this was a trigger because it triggered a flood of memories in my mind, taking me back to my childhood. And many things I will say you probably would have heard before because I might have said them before. But it was very riveting, and memories of my past overwhelmed me. And reflecting on those days as a young man growing up in rural St. Mary on a farm, looking back at those years now, I can clearly see that I had an inveterate propensity to be destructive. Maybe I was grieving from my mother or lack of something, but I had a lot of anger in me. I don't have those now, but I had a lot of anger in me. And I remember when I did what was called bad things, my grandmother said the devil made me do it. And that sounded really good because it's not my fault. The devil made me do it. I'm free of whatever action it was that was bad because it's not my fault. Now, I'm not even sure in those days if I had a realistic concept of who or what the devil was. But I'm pretty sure I didn't like him, her, or it because I had to endure severe beatings for the things that this devil made me do, which I considered to be very unfair at the time. By the time I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, I had this concept of God as a white man who lived up in the clouds, and I had this really vivid image of this God. He wore a dull gray robe, and he had a white beard, and he wore glasses. And these glasses were sort of like what people today call horn-rimmed glasses. And he had this huge book with the names of everybody and the sins that they committed. So he would sit at his desk with this book, going through it, trying to decide who he was going to punish for their sins. And then he had a thunder stick. And his thunder stick was something like what was called a plane, which the carpenters in those days used to have to shave the wood or to make the wood smooth. And when he was angry, he would pick up his thunder stick and he would roll it. And you had these loud claps of thunder. And my grandmother would shout, "Massa got a rolling thunder." And then she would look up at the image of a blonde-haired Caucasian man hanging on the wall and shout, "Mercy, Lord!" And in the mornings, she would look up at that image and proclaim, "Massa God pretty." I was considered to be quite mad by my peers and some adults. And one of the reasons I believe that they decided that I was mad was because I liked to spend a lot of time by myself. And I would sit down under the trees outside in the dark, and that's where the duppies were supposed to be hiding. Now, as a child, you had to be mad to be sitting outside by yourself where duppies are hanging out. And they also used to tell me that I write crazy things because, I used to write a lot. I've been writing poetry from a very young age. I was very attached to literature and poetry. I remember my form teacher in primary school threw out my essay called The Creaturization of Bull Bennett. She said that I was mad and needed counseling. But being considered mad at the time was actually beneficial to me because I was able to get away with a lot of outrageous things. Because people wouldn't pay any attention to me. They would say, "No bother with him. I'm mad, him mad. Left him, I'm mad, him mad." Adults in those days amused me, and I sometimes played games with their egos. I remember my form teacher called me to her desk one morning and asked me, "How are you feeling?" "I've not decided yet, miss," I responded. That threw her off for a little. "What do you mean you have not decided how you're feeling?" She retorted. "I mean exactly what I said, miss," I said. She looked at me for a long time, and I could tell that she did not want to continue this line of questioning. "You know, Kenneth," she finally said, "I'm worried about you. That essay you wrote, what did you call it?" "The Creaturization of Bull Bennett, miss," I said. "Have you shown it to your parents?" "I don't have parents, miss," I responded. "Well, where's your mother?" she asked. "She died, miss," I responded. "Where's your father?" she asked. "I was told that he's in England, miss." I could tell that she was getting frustrated with me. "Who do you live with?" she continued. "With my grandmother and the chickens, miss," I answered. By this time, she had had enough of me. "I will speak with the headmaster, and we will have a guidance counselor come to the school and speak with you. You need help." So I decided not to tell her about Francine, my invisible psychiatrist. Then moving forward, my sojourn with Christianity was a turbulent one. My grandmother was a very ardent Seventh-day Adventist, so that means I had to go to church every Saturday and listen to the booming voice of Elder Clark condemning sinners who would definitely be going to hell. Now, the various denominations seem to have a problem deciding who or what was their God. They all had issues with their gods. Some could not decide if there was one God, two gods, or three gods, which resulted in what I termed the amalgamation of a triune God. But they all seemed comfortable believing in the same devil. Yes, they didn't have an issue with the devil at all. They all felt comfortable with the same devil. Now, to escape all of this confusion and uncertainty and the obscurity posed to my mind by dialectical materialism and existentialism, I retreated to the world of poetry, which was the only world that I felt comfortable with or felt comfortable in. Now, for a young Jamaican country boy grappling with the clash of religious teachings and the questions arising from them, my life was a mixture of bewilderment and yearning. In Martintown and Planters Hall, the rural heart of Jamaica, where life is closely tied to the land, the divine often seemed inseparable from the everyday. Church hymns echoed in the hills and in the homes. Then there was the emergence of Rastafarianism, offering a new and revolutionary vision of ancestral reconnection and a new way of life for Black people. All this mingling with colonial doctrines of subservience to a monarchy responsible for the brainwashing of people like my grandmother who died, believing that God was white and that good things were only made in England. You know, caricatures of these gods perpetuated by the protagonist of religion were like fearful specters, each demanding allegiance and obeisance, each claiming to be the only God there is, leaving my young mind in a haze of confusion. So, unable to reconcile these contradictions, and often what I considered to be strange concepts and way of thinking. So, seeking solace was important to me, but I could not find it in the vociferous sermons preached by Elder Clark of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, or Pastor Campbell, who was less vociferous in the Anglican Church, but one morning he gave me a ride, and when he found out I was going to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, he told me to get out of my car and go to your church. So I usually retreat to the only place which comforted me, the rhythm of the natural world. I found poetry in the rustle of the sugarcane fields, in the thunderous roaring and cascading of waterfalls, in the songs of the meandering rivers and rivulets flowing to the arms of the ocean, especially comforting to me in the mornings were the mellifluous songs of what we call John Twits. Poetry streamed from my pen as I sat in Holywell and watched the sunlight dancing upon Newcastle. Precious were the times when I would sit upon the jagged rocks in White River, where the Sans Souci Hotel now stands, and I would feel the salt wind coming in from the ocean, caressing my face. In those moments, I learned to trust my own voice, a voice untrammeled by the dictates of dogma and the confusion of multiple gods. Nature became my cathedral and poetry my prayer. And the words I wrote were not just an escape, but a rebellion against the walls of tradition that seek to confine me. Through the beauty of my homeland, I began to see a different kind of God, not one sitting up in the clouds itching to hurl fire and brimstone upon me, but one alive in the verdant green hills of Raffington, in the roar of the ocean, in the quiet dignity of the people around me. Now here in Waitukubuli, in the arms of nature and poetry, I find freedom, which the gods of the Europeanization of Christianity could never give to me. And I feel that I am blessed to live in a time when doubt is no longer a burden, but an inspiration and a stepping stone, which I hope will lead me to the path of wisdom. Simon and Garfunkel in their song, and I repeat, they said, the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made. And this inspired me to write the poem that I would like to share tonight. And I begin. No, sir, I will not bow and pray to the triune God they made. Those deceitfully crafted false images shamelessly arrayed. My years have come and gone, leaving me now to grow old. Still I will not bow at their altars, though they gleam with gold. Let them vociferate their scriptures linked with dread. Truth was never in the lies of the doctrines they have spread. Let me walk the path of the forest, where the rivers speak, where answers in the whispering of the wind I will seek. The stars their wisdom with me they share, of a God free and boundless everywhere. No clergyman can trammel the essence or bind it to a creed. The Council of Nicaea failed, to encage the living seed. In the hearts of humankind, his temple finds its flame, and every soul that seeks his light shall call him by his name. Let them preach of their triune God, worship idols carved in stone. I'll find my God in every leaf, in the whisper of my own. For faith is not a captive thing, nor love a throne to gain. The truth of freedom will rise like the sun, breaking every chain. So I wrote this poem just from hearing the words from the song of Simon and Garfunkel. So that's what I wanted to share with you tonight.